All right, welcome everyone. Zero, Space Dancer, Ultra, Darren, J. How are you guys doing? Scion, welcome. A few more people coming in. Excellent. I am just waiting for my stream link. Come on down to AMA chat. There we go. That took longer than usual to show up. Not sure why, but that is okay. Drop that in our stage archive. Great. Darren doing well. Good to hear. Hey, Spongy. All right, guys, I got a lot of stuff to talk about today, believe it or not. So, lots of good things, interesting things. Hopefully, we'll spark some good discussion. Of course, we also have some questions to go through, so we'll be getting to those as well. Yo, what is up, OXR? All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. Like I said, we got some good amount of content to cover. So you may not be aware, but much of the team, including Sim, are actually attending the Ethereum Community Conference in Paris, which is the largest annual European Ethereum event that is focused on tech and community, if you didn't know. So this has so far been a very fruitful event, but it has led to a small delay in WMATIC rewards for YL though as you saw, this was quickly resolved. I personally did not attend, I was not able to, but our team is definitely there making a presence and connections. Also for the earnings pool, we saw the announcement. So epochs work on a timestamp where rewards are going to be deployed every epoch flip, and any refills before or after that are queued and have to be manually inserted. So in the case this week, we were slightly early to refill the can't say that, epoch flip, which did lead to some delays in rewards. So we do apologize for that. This will never affect the actual amount of rewards that you receive on a given epoch, because when the epoch distribution begins, the pool will distribute whatever rewards have been inserted. So what will change is the speed with which it is distributed. So if a pool is loaded with 100 WMATIC, it doesn't matter if it's rewarded to YL in 3 days or 5 days. Ultimately, it's still 100 WMATIC, and because unlocks occur every week, you get the same amount of yield. But I definitely understand the concern that can arise when users don't see any rewards being sent to the YL pool. So we appreciate your patience on that, but rest assured that these rewards will flow and all rewards loaded up will be distributed. So thank you for your patience understanding on that. Yo, what is up, T1? All right. Additionally, vSphere is still undergoing some testing. And FYI, the VAPR is lower this week due to some timing issues with pushing vSphere. Rest assured, of course, all is going well, but just thought I would sneak some of that info in there. Also, from a treasury standpoint, well, let me back up for just 1 second, because this relates to one of the previously one of the biggest suggestions from the community, which was to have Sphere go on a centralized exchange. But as we will often say in response to that, is that Sphere's focus is very decentralized. So as part of that decentralization, a step towards that further decentralization, we do plan to continue to decentralize the treasury and actually move away from centralized assets. That includes USDC. So just to note on that with the treasury and plans with decentralizations. Photos from the event. I don't know if we will or not. Team Claradora with the treasury buying sphere. Lately, vSphere is probably getting pretty close. Maybe. Some feed pics, yeah. All right. So next up, just to recap, because we did have our AMA with Chronos and Nick Westlake of Off-Chain Labs, which if you don't know is Arbitrum. And just wanted to share some of those highlights. So, of course, we know Dyson will be the ALM, or Automatic Liquidity Manager, for Chronos's VE33 concentrated liquidity pools, and will route swap fees as bribes to VECHR holders. Dyson will. So Dyson will also keep liquidity within the active range via rebalancing, and will maintain maturity adjusted NFT boosts. Now the cool thing about this is because $1 in bribes typically yields more than $1 in emissions, this actually means that these Dyson managed concentrated liquidity vaults can actually offer LPers more compensation against impermanent loss than is ordinarily available, increasing the likelihood of outperforming impermanent loss. Because remember, the Dyson swap fees are being routed to bribes. So that's a pretty cool part of that. In the future, Dyson also plans to offer other protocols and in general a custom weighting of both narrow and wide ranges within the same concentrated liquidity vault. I think this is pretty cool too. So these types of tailored vault solutions can reduce slippage on swaps thanks to those narrow ranges, while also simultaneously making it more difficult for bad players to manipulate price thanks to the wider ranges. And all this through a simplified and automated vault and user interface. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. It's kind of more of a product for projects, if you get what I mean. Similar to like the liquid wrapper solution of Dyson. Just kind of trying to expand the outreach of Dyson overall. We know that Dyson's vaults, of course, now show historical APR and TVL for the Uniswap v3 vaults, and we do have a lot more helpful analytics on the way. We're also actually looking at listing Dyson or getting Dyson listed on different yield platforms so that if users want to look up yield, say for like Matic liquidity pairs, Dyson would be able to show up. Also pretty important, right? If you have the yield opportunities, you need to also be able to be found by individuals searching for those yield opportunities. We also know from the AMA that Chronos will be a liquidity hub for Star liquidity on launch of Prion, thanks to Sphere's VECHR holdings that have been accumulated through Dyson's SPCHR liquid wrapper solution. And we can also use Chronos's concentrated liquidity solution to really enforce the star peg much more cost effectively, thanks to that increased virtual liquidity depth from concentrated liquidity, right? Because you need less liquidity in order to get a significant amount more of that virtual depth. So that can lead to a more stable peg. Because right with the stablecoin, you really only need a narrow range. Of course, you need to cover all bases, but having significant depth in that narrow range right around $1 can significantly help establish and maintain the peg. Of course, more liquidity and incentives through Prion and Chronos means more volume, more TVL, more revenue for both Chronos and Sphere's ecosystem. So all good things within that. Let's see. We also talked about during the AMA LSDfi collateral in Prion for yield and borrowing. We've talked a lot about that. Cyan, yes, indeed. Prion will launch on Arbitrum. And actually, with Prion seeking to collateralize assets from all over the Arbitrum network, our goal really is to help tie that network together into one decentralized stablecoin by offering a means of yield amplification for all users and for multiple different projects. So that's kind of our goal. That's kind of the overarching message or kind of thought that came out of that AMA with Off-Chain Labs and Chronos. The other point within that too is that non-yield bearing collateral, say like hard blue chip assets like WETH, can also still become yield bearing by being routed from Prion and into Dyson. And then Dyson can use that, or at least a portion of that WETH collateral, in different yield farming strategies. And one such yield farming strategy can, of course, be Sphere Lend, which will come as well in due time, our own borrowing lending platform similar to Aave. All right, so that is the Chronos AMA recap. Hopefully you guys were able to tune in. If not, hopefully you were able to go through my AMA recap. I tried to capture as much as I possibly could within that recap. So hopefully it was helpful for those who were not able to listen to the full AMA. Now, that all being said, Chronos had anticipated that they would launch their concentrated liquidity on Monday of this week, so 2 days ago. Obviously, Chronos has had some delays in launching their concentrated liquidity, but everything is ready to go on our end. So we're also playing the waiting game, and we appreciate your patience. We're trying to be patient as well. This was interesting regarding Prion's stability pool. So last AMA, I was able to kind of talk more in depth. I don't remember who asked. Let me just go back real quick. I believe it was Jason. Yeah, Jason asked the question about Prion's stability pool. So I did go a bit more in detail about that. And then after that, Sim mentioned in the Sphere chat that he has been conceptualizing an auto-compounding stability pool for Star. So let's take a step back just to recap. With a stability pool, users are able to deposit Star, and then if or when liquidations occur, those liquidated assets are distributed to stability pool users in exchange for their Star. And since Star is always over collateralized, this is profitable for stability pool users, since for $1 of Star in the stability pool, you will always receive more than $1 in liquidated assets during liquidations. So Sim now has this idea to turn the stability pool into a Dyson vault such that when collateral is liquidated, it is swapped on the market to lock in the yield, and then that is deposited into the stability pool for stability pool users as more Star. So basically, that way the stability pool becomes an auto-compounded, single-sided staking Star vault through liquidations. Pretty cool, pretty interesting, pretty passive. So I think it will attract a lot of interest. Also, the single-sided staking is obviously of great interest to folks, because then you don't have to worry about any impermanent loss. So that's always good to see. So let me take a pause there. Any questions from that or thoughts about what I've covered so far? And just a quick recap, we talked about the YL Sphere rewards. We talked about our AMA with Chronos, and then we just talked about Prion stability pool and a new conceptualization that Sim has had for it. So any questions on that so far, coming up in AMA chat on Sphere Discord here. Doesn't seem like that, and you know what? That is okay. I hope that that's a sign that we're doing our job and we're communicating things effectively. I like to assume that, but of course I never know. But I like to hope. Let's say I hope instead of assume. All right then. Moving swiftly forward. So I saw this tweet. I don't even remember how or why it came up on my Twitter feed, but I did want to share it because it's actually quite interesting how it kind of relates to how it does relate to Sphere, even though it's not about Sphere. So I'm going to post this in AMA archive. Let's see if that actually will come up with the right thing. Yes. All right. So I'm just double checking that the link is correct. It is. So I just posted the link to this Twitter post in AMA Archive. Again, it is not related to Sphere, but I read through this and I was like, wow, this really relates to Sphere. So let me summarize. So this tweet proposed that most Bitcoin will end up being bridged to Ethereum and then collateralized for ETH. They then proposed that ETH would be swapped for LSDfi for yield, and then that LSDfi would further be collateralized for stables for additional yield, which is exactly what Prion is offering. So then, taking it a step further, they propose since various stablecoins and LSDfi providers will need to compete for market share, including by competing for deeper liquidity across dexes to keep their stablecoin peg and direct dex emissions to their pools and increase yields, those protocols will either need to acquire governance or bribe governors for votes in order to remain competitive. So then, with competing providers and limited DEX emissions, the governance power becomes the point in the system where the most value can be captured. So then, governance tokens will then offer the most sustainable source of cash flow by consistently auctioning off the necessary votes to the highest bidder through bribes. So in the end, liquidity flow to the governors will flow to the governors, and the ones who compound into more governance will inherit the system, is the message of this tweet. Now, obviously, people are looking at the current market conditions and DeFi landscape, and it seems they're coming to similar conclusions in different ways. So again, nowhere in this tweet was a Sphere ecosystem mentioned, but I could not help but see this apply to exactly what Sphere is doing, right? Sphere is a meta governance kingpin. Our liquid wrapper solutions are compounding Sphere's governance, increasing our reach within these different dexes, and increasing Sphere's ability to move liquidity within DeFi and earn bribes along the way. And of course, with Prion, we have our very own solution for LSDfi collateralization, interest-free loans that welcomes LSDfi protocols with open arms. So even other CDP protocols can still route yield to Sphere via Sphere's DEX governance, right? So even competing stablecoins, is what I'm trying to say, can still provide benefit to the Sphere ecosystem thanks to Sphere's meta governance. So pretty interesting and pretty exciting, and I did want to share it. Hopefully you find it as interesting as I do. Just again, similar people having similar thoughts in terms of what will turn out to have potentially the most value within DeFi, and that being the governance, the ability to actually direct liquidity through bribes, through voting. So pretty cool. Any questions or thoughts on that? Or am I the only one who found that to be interesting? I heard that price time is actually sold time. Thank you, Cyril. I appreciate that. I'm also running nose time. I do apologize. I can't tell if it's allergies or I'm hoping it's just allergies. Yeah. Um, I'm running on that. Overall, I feel air quality. That's true. Overall, I feel okay. So I'm thinking it's just allergies, but today it just like smacked me like a train. But we're doing good. All right. Yeah, global air quality is pretty bad. Oh man. Well, that is no bueno. That is definitely no bueno. And like you're saying, probably definitely does not help out with our poor allergies. All right. So next up is a pretty interesting discussion that CryptoFat had wrote out in Sphere Chat. And I really wanted to go through it and highlight it because he is coming from the marketing perspective of Sphere. And I really wanted to get into it. There's a lot of really interesting points in discussion. And I have seen a lot of people asking about the different marketing methodologies that we've been utilizing, especially as we're coming up into the launch of Prion. So I think this will be helpful to go through. OXR, that is hilarious that you found this GIF. All right. So let's go through this. And his thoughts include a recap on Sphere's marketing methodology and marketing in general, Sphere's implementation of marketing for the launch of Prion, and a deep dive on the current crypto marketing use cases. So, first, within marketing in general, we kind of need to define how to build an effective marketing plan. So the way he broke this down is number one, knowing who the correct people are to make the biggest impact on the product that we are marketing. So for example, Prion. Number two is then placing ourselves in their field of view. Number three is obtaining their attention. And finally, number four is showing or demonstrating how our product then solves a user pain point so that we can actually get a conversion to use what we are offering. And marketing campaigns in general need to be able to use all four in order to be successful. So if you do not know the correct people to make the biggest impact, then you will burn cash on people who are not your customer. So it can be very inefficient. If you do not place yourself in those interested people's field of view, you will of course have no one to sell to. If you don't get their attention, then you can very easily be ignored, just like another billboard ad along the highway. And then finally, if you don't show people how the product actually solves a pain point, then people will ask, but why do I even need this? Why does this even matter? Why is this even worth my time? So before I go kind of more into this, if you do have a marketing idea, and can go through these 4 steps as an outline, please actually feel free to share your research and DM CryptoFat. His DMs are open for a reason, and he'd be more than happy to engage in constructive discussions about marketing. Indeed, indeed. Calling out CryptoFat. He asked for it. So he didn't ask for a call out, but he did ask for the DM, so there we go. All right. So let's go a bit more into this with respect to Prion. So there are kind of 2 key bits of information that we have to frame this conversation around. Perfect. The first key is which specific part of Prion we're talking about. Because the use case between Prion, Star, and the Prion token are different, even though they are part of the whole project. So a humble stablecoin farmer may only want to take advantage of our Star stable LP pools, while someone else may want to leverage and loop Star and Prion. And there's many different ways to utilize Prion. So then the second key point within this is cash burn rate, right? Because every piece of marketing costs cash, whether it be hard costs like payroll or influencer costs, but it can also be opportunity costs, which sometimes can be harder to measure. But say you spend $5,000 in 6 months building something that you could have spent $8,000 on and had in a week. That's an example of an opportunity cost. So opportunity cost can come as time or as money, basically. So like, what else could have been built? What other relationships could have been nurtured? Or what market conditions were missed out on in those 6 months, right? So these types of opportunity costs have to be thought out and quantified as best as possible in making a marketing decision. Triz, this is off topic, but how do you manage to speak for longer amounts of time? I just got into a new job where I have to speak a lot. My throat gets sore very quick while your voice stays very smooth. I guess it's practice. I guess it comes from practice. If you check back on the earlier AMAs, first off, I was definitely more nervous, so that may have come through. But I think just practice in general, and that's exactly what Cyril said. Um, yeah, I do use tea a lot. Tea is very helpful. Um, Sometimes a cough drop can actually be pretty clutch, especially if your throat is very sore. It can be kind of held within your cheek and used. I have employed that a couple of times. People don't notice, but it helps calm your throat. Of course, having water, tea, other things available at your disposal. Um, if you're giving a presentation actively, it is very acceptable to drink water. People will do that all the time. It is more than acceptable. So I appreciate the off topicness. I think that's a good question. All right. So routing back into no problem. Routing back into kind of Sphere's implementation of marketing for Prion. So we as a team have made two key decisions in this phase of launching Prion. Number one is onboarding a marketing agency, and then number two is actually launching Prion in stages. So that gives some space between Star as a stablecoin, the CDP aspect of Prion, and then the Prion token with the VE33 tokenomics, with the farm strategies within Prion, with Oprion. There's a separation between those two for a reason. So the marketing agency we've worked with have given us insight into influencers and the good and bad of Zeely quests, for example. They have taken some of the socials workload off of the team and have helped mitigate some opportunity costs. They have real life use case scenarios for what things have worked and what things didn't work, and then also why some things worked and why some things didn't work. Kind of like talking to an architect before building a house, it's the insight that has been most valuable. But also, by separating the launch of Prion into stages, it gives us some options as to how to actually build awareness for Prion. And again, without really divulging fully into our plans, if you launch a stablecoin, you need liquidity. And so we need to answer the question of where does that liquidity come from and how can we build it using the tools at our disposal. Once we get solid liquidity into Star, things can really start to move after that. So then the next portion of this talks about crypto marketing use cases and kind of deep diving into that. So in general, part of marketing really involves spending time watching crypto users and how they react to other marketing plans and ideas. And that includes from meme coins like Pepe, Pepe token, to project launches. And there's a lot of information and insight that can be obtained by simply examining how these projects marketed and also how users reacted to that marketing. There's also great value in examining every plan and idea that does not work and analyzing why. So here's a couple examples. Say you burn a lot of cash on an influencer who has a huge user base, but then that user base has nothing to do with crypto, and you solve no pain point for those users with your product, and ultimately you have very little to show for it because these people are just not interested in what you're offering. So ultimately, impressions and reach really don't mean anything if you can't actually convert that audience into users. Now, we were surprised at how much our community, you guys, and other communities wanted airdrops, and we're definitely exploring ways we can implement this. But there are also some logistical limitations with how our products are designed. So just keep that in mind. But if you can make an NFT unique enough, it doesn't necessarily matter if it has some utility to it. Some people will just want to buy it so that they can say that they have it. And that's kind of the power of supply and demand. So all of these pieces have to be considered when constructing these things within a marketing plan. Now, our mention of the Prion whitelist in my video a couple weeks ago was also a bit of an experiment, and it did pretty much exactly what we were hoping for, which is raise interest and awareness. So, how we now utilize, give away, and leverage those whitelist spots will be very intentional and will be designed to expose the entire Prion ecosystem to as many people as possible. Because when it comes to the actual whitelist token sale, say we only fulfill 25% of that sale, then we clearly did something wrong. So even if we have to delay launch to get the best data, and even if it is data we don't like, we still have to do that. So this is why having a marketing agency with experience has been important in our planning. All right. Finally, if you have the opportunity to communicate directly to an audience, that is your target audience, so everything lines up, you still have to present a use case for your product to solve a pain point. So all in all, again, we need to know our audience. We need to position ourselves in front of them. We need to be able to get their attention, and then we need to provide them with the solution that they actually want to use. So this was a breakdown of CryptoFat's marketing deep dive. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it made a lot of good points, so that is why I wanted to share it. You can, of course, search his name in the Sphere chat if you want to see a full breakdown of everything he said. But hopefully I did it some justice and talked about all points that he was trying to get at. Any questions about marketing? While I once again tried to deal with my nose. I'm sorry. All right. Well, in that case, we have three. Double check here. Yes, three different questions to get to. So let's jump into those. This is from Drarkle. Can someone confirm if a percent swap fees, liquidation fees, and other sorts of fees that all the Sphere DApps get and generate go to the treasury? I understand the treasury has farming yields and asset holdings, but I'm interested to know if the ecosystem supports Sphere via a contribution, say a percent of Dyson overall fees into treasury, or is that all revenue contained within each app? Really great question. And I'm trying to think, because I do plan to make a video that kind of again gives a general overview of the Sphere ecosystem, but to answer the question specifically, revenue from the entire ecosystem does indeed funnel to the Sphere treasury and then ultimately to Spherians. And that is the point of the ecosystem, right? Is to try and simplify a lot of complicated DeFi farming strategies down into one token. So for tokenless projects within the ecosystem like Dyson, the Sphere treasury directly earns yield from it because Sphere is the governance token of Dyson. And you can refer to each vault's performance fee to see, for example, what percentage is being taken as revenue from the yield generated. And then for projects with tokens like Prion, the Sphere treasury will have an allocation of VE Prion, the governance and yield-bearing token of Prion, from which Sphere will earn revenue from all of Prion's revenue streams. and so on and so forth within the ecosystem, such that we, the Spherians, are building an entire ecosystem of different yield bearing projects, all of which funnels down to the Sphere token, yield and governance. Also, we are working on our quarterly treasury report as well, which will be released quarterly, as I mentioned, and we'll have a detailed breakdown of Q2 as well as a summary of Q1 as comparison. And I think the comparisons are where we will find a lot of interest in terms of what people want to see. But of course, when we released our initial one, there was nothing to compare to since it was the first iteration. It's like stating the obvious, but even so. All right. Strix had asked, will staked ETH ever be able to be used as collateral? Great question. And there are many versions of staked ETH, like WST ETH and RETH. And Prion will indeed focus on ETH derivatives like these to accept them as collateral. So LSDfi in particular will be accepted within Prion so that you can continue earning yield on staked ETH within a liquidity pool and earn and have the ability to borrow a stablecoin from that collateral. We can also potentially accept non-staked versions of ETH, such as like WETH, which, as I've mentioned a bit earlier, can then be routed through Dyson and farmed in different farming strategies, for example, Sphere Lend, in which it can be lent out for yield. So basically, every single deposit within Prion, the goal is to have it be yield farming in some depth. That way, there is no stagnant vault. There is always some portion of each vault, at least, being yield farmed to provide yield for the depositors, for Prion, for VE Prion. That is the goal, right? It is far more capital efficient that way. Now, the exact vaults that will be available on launch of Prion and those that will be added in time will, of course, all be revealed in time. But until then, just know that liquid staked ETH and its derivatives are perhaps the biggest focus of what collateral we will want to see within Prion, especially at launch. So it's a very good question, and the simple answer is yes, that is our big focus. Spongy in AMA chat. To add to what you said about the tweet, I suggested some time ago to include a Euro stablecoin into the ecosystem. So please add a Euro stablecoin. It is a good idea. I think that's a very interesting suggestion. Ultimately, that would not be up to me to decide, but it is something that, like I said, is a very good idea and is worth suggesting. And I think it's something worth putting into our sphere ideas in terms of having it there, letting the community bounce ideas off this as well, seeing how much support we can get for this idea, and kind of trickle it up from there. All right. 1 second here. Okay. My allergies are just not doing well right now. I apologize. All right. Last question is probably not a legit question, but I wanted to respond to it nonetheless. This is by Cosmon X, who asked, "Holy expletive, how is this project still alive?" Well, thank you for your question, and I'm glad we could provide you with some amusement. in our existence. Sphere is alive and well, and we are, of course, about to release one of our biggest ecosystem puzzle pieces, Prion. We have done very well during this bear market thanks to our treasury management, our strong conviction and dedication to our goals, and thanks to our multiple partnerships. So, welcome back if you're truly looking to hang out, and wishing you the best if you're simply passing through. I don't think that was a real question, but like I said, I did want to respond to it. Okay. So, I actually made pretty good time with everything that I wanted to cover. I do want to apologize once again for my allergies. Um, it's I know it's disruptive for you guys, so again, I apologize for that. But moving past that, with all the different things I talked about, right? We went through Ethereum Community Conference. We talked about the Wildsphere earnings pool, the AMA with Chronos. Quick recap on that. Talked about Dyson, about Prion, about the stability pool with the new idea Sim has for an auto-compounded single-sided staking star vault. We talked about the Twitter post that I placed in AMA archive for people's interest about the importance of governance and LSDfi, and how people are starting to think that that will be a very important thing to focus on, which is indeed what Sphere is focusing on. So pretty cool to see that alignment of thought, independent alignment of thought. Then we did our massive deep dive on marketing with an ultimate focus on the importance of creating an opportunity to communicate with an audience. That's our target audience. Positioning ourselves in front of them, getting their attention, and then, of course, providing them with a solution that they actually want to use, and really aligning those different focuses before deploying capital into that marketing plan. OXR, it'd be cool to see an update on the ETH conference and what was learned so we can apply to Sphere and future projects. I will keep that in mind, and what we can share, I will certainly do my best to do so, and we'll see what else we can share as things move forward. But most likely, I imagine that these things will be gradually expanded upon in time. Yeah, I think, as many conferences as we can attend and more exposure, the better. And especially, as the ecosystem matures, as our puzzle pieces are finally able to be released, put in place, and people can truly see the ecosystem working. And I'm talking having Dyson fully up and running with Prion, Prion fully launched with the Star CDP side and the VE Prion, O Prion side, and having Sphereland positioned as well. Then I think we have a lot more to talk about at these conferences. Not to say that we don't have a lot to talk about now. Obviously, we attended this conference, but we will have more to talk about once those pieces are in place. And then even further down the line, right, we have VE Sphere and Covenant moving deeper into the decentralized governance, the bribes, the actual direction of liquidity through Sphere's meta governance. So there's many, many pieces, and of course more beyond that, that we haven't branched into publicly, but so many different cool pieces that will be coming. And I do think that the more the ecosystem has developed out, the more that it has a staying power in terms of actual data and things to show people. Like, yes, we have been around for X amount of time. This has been in action for X amount of time. This is what it has been able to accomplish in that time. Having that information is going to be very important for that community building, for that exposure. And you guys are very early in that process still, so it's pretty exciting to see. We're happy to have you guys here. I'm stoked to be here, so I appreciate having the opportunity to do so. And yeah, Yeah, puzzles are pretty cool. I've said it many times, but the my favorite analogy is still like a clock. We're putting all the different cogs together in this giant clock that is the Sphere ecosystem. And sometimes we put a piece down and people look at it like, what is that doing there? It's not doing anything. But in reality, we just need other cogs to go in place for everything to turn together. And once all those cogwheels are in place and the face of the clock is easily apparent, which is of course the Sphere token, it'll be much easier to push exposure and basically, quote unquote, sell the ecosystem as a unified synergistic ecosystem. Absolutely. Thanks for coming out as well, OXR. We're happy to have you guys here. Thanks for everyone else showing up, asking questions, participating in the AMA chat. I guess I'll go ahead and end it off here. You guys always welcome to leave questions in AMA questions. If things come up in Sphere chat, Dyson chat, of course, we are more than happy to engage with you there as well. And yeah, wish you all the best. Have a great rest of your week. Always remember that you matter for who you are. And take care, y'all. Have a good one. Bye bye.